Pray for day, hell night.
Alright, this is a movie that really should have been condensed. It was like it was an hour and 41 minutes long, and
there's just a lot of script filler. Look it up on Urban Dictionary, that explains it.
yeah, that pretty much sums it up. A whole bunch of script filler of shots of nothing.
Which means they just milked every single scene of nothing.
A whole bunch of nothing.
For what it's worth for screen time.
A few talented people were pretty much involved in this, though. Erwin Yablon's the guy who was along with the production team of Halloween, and Frank Darabont. And anyway, Linda Blair, the girl who was in The Exorcist, who played the Exorcist girl, was in this. Her performance was terrible. She was even nominated for a Razzie in 1981 for this, for
Terrible.
Worst Actress.
Terrible.
And she deserved it too. It was so bad. Vince Van Patten plays the Blondie kid in this. Anyway, let me just sum up the concept. The concept is pretty dope. It tells the story about a madman that murdered his family because they were too ugly and
they're all mutants and inbreds
and mongoloids. So yeah, and they lived in this rich mansion that was gated off, and obviously it was 12 years before. And there's a college with sororities right next to it. So every year they send like some pledges into it. So this year they sent 2 girls, 2 guys. Okay, you want to hear how cliche these characters are? One's the slut. One's Blondie.
There's a surfer boy who's with the slut.
And then one's a sober kid.
Who's with another sober girl.
She's totally the final girl. You could see it coming from a mile away. Not even close.
Like completely.
And she's like total tease. Everything is so fake in this movie. Even the owl noises were so fake.
I thought they were real, and then I realized that even those are fake.
And then there's like the other kids who are trying to like rig pranks. And it isn't a haunted mansion. It's the legend is that the thing still lives there. One of the bodies wasn't found.
That's the legend.
So the mutant, it's kind of like House of the Cemetery style. So the mutant still kind of like lives inside.
Or like Hatchet, he still resides around his house.
Or like Halloween, how Michael Myers is in the old Myers house on Halloween night.
I know, so cliche.
But and then so one of the deaths is outside the house. The kids were rigging the pranks. He gets killed off by his head gets twisted around.
Creep show style, where his head gets turned around like the lady in the kitchen. Oh, and you're like, it's pretty good style of it because he falls down and he hits the ground. They shows blood, with this.
And another one, like the reefer shaft goes through his chest.
And that one's tight.
And it goes through his body, and at the other end, blood's dripping off the end of the reefer shaft.
In the light, and it's a pretty tight shot.
One scene, the Virgin is being a total tease.
Oh yeah, and then they go to bed, and they're and then every time they get up out of bed, when they hear the noise,
no, they fall asleep even though the slut took acid. No, she took the slang version of acid. What's it called?
Quaaludes.
She actually says that.
Yeah, and then she takes a shot, and then they're doing it, and the next scene they're all in bed. But then she wakes up and takes another shot and another freaking strip of acid.
Yeah, they're taking power naps, even though when you take acid, you're up until the crack of dawn, 6 a.m.
Running your head underneath the faucet, drinking a gallon of orange juice.
And scraping for stems
and ice on your balls.
And any keef you can find possible to keep it going.
And more like any stem and any little green speck you could find. We're going.
Yeah, you don't take power naps in the middle of your trip.
And let alone wake up and take another strip acid.
I know, you can't just stop and start like that. Let's be serious.
Let's be realistic.
And anyway, he finds her head in the bed. Dove. Always dove.
They're not sure he killed, but she's dead.
And then he's like, what's her name? The sorority girl. Blondie flips out and he's like, the whole world has gone mad.
Oh yeah, that part's hilarious when you first come down there and tell him that she's dead.
It's similar to Randy's freaking quote in Scream 1 where he's just like, Billy, it's Stu, he's gone mad.
Well, the line's hilarious before that when he's like, who's dead? And he's like, I don't know her name, the sorority chick.
Yeah, you could tell the writers of this had fun writing Blondie's lines. He totally plays the airheaded douchebag.
The surfer douchebag.
His character lines were hilarious in this. That was the only bit of dialogue that was good. The rest of it was all generic and boring characters and
pretty pathetic
generic
and dull.
lines. Guess what happens next?
Nothing. Whole bunch of nothing. You could literally fast
Dark
forward
shots
some
of nothing.
scenes.
We did fast forward. No,
Like 5
no,
minutes,
like you'd
10
see
minutes,
them walking
3
at
minutes.
one part, and you'd be like, okay, they're going upstairs, so we could fast forward a minute, and we'd fast forward it, and they'd still be walking up the stairs.
So then we do it again at least 3 other times. So there's a lot of scenes where it's just them walking, and it literally, and like maybe a little jump scare, but it's nothing. It just goes on for like 10
No
minutes.
interesting dialogue at all. Maybe a bit in the beginning part, but then the rest of the movie's
So
really
this movie's an
dried
hour
out.
and 40 minutes. It could have come down to like an hour and 3 minutes.
And it would have made it more action-packed and
and
condensed
less
more
dull.
suspenseful, yeah. So,
Instead, you're sitting around wondering what the hell's gonna happen.
so
and you're
then
like, nothing.
Blondie like leaves, he flips out, and he shows up at the police station. If they like did a remake of this, like Matt Bomer would be playing that character.
They made it all suspenseful when he was going over the freaking fence and he was getting cut up by the razor sharp edges at the
Yeah,
top.
they milked every single scene possibly could.
And they were like, more blood, more blood.
Vince Van Patten, who plays Blondie in this, he does poker announcing nowadays, which is ironic. I think he also was like did some professional tennis in the 80s also. But anyway, he shows up at the freaking cop station, and the police are like, "Oh, we're
They're
too
like,
busy with domestic disturbance
No,
calls."
they're like, get in line, take a number. Like if you're going to get meat at the grocery store.
So then he
They're like,
steals
"Pull
a
a number."
gun from them, and he
Oh yeah, such a movie scene. He's walking out of the
they do
cop
a bunch
station.
of filler, and
And
he
he
like
sees open door with
robs
all
some
the
guy's
weapons.
car, which makes no sense either. He
He
just
robs
does it
him
to
to
drive
take
it
the car
back,
to
even
drive
though it's all in town.
Even though it's just part of the script.
And anyway, he ends up going back, and it does filler forever. And the way he gets killed is he does a wrestling match like on the outside steps, and then he like
With the killer, and then he
I
shoots
didn't
him
see
with
his
the
death
shotgun.
coming. He goes to talk to the guys after all of it, and the killer pulls him around the corner. It was pretty
Well,
dope.
before that, though, when he kills him, he falls into the lake or into the pond right out there.
And they do this shot of
Of all the freaking frog eyes and all the things in the water, and then he jumps out.
there was
You don't see his eyes.
slightly a few
It's
creative shots.
Yeah,
in
it
this.
was creative, but the rest of the movie was just so boring and so much nothing. And you're like, this is terrible.
It's the definition of script filler. Look
It's
it
the
up.
definition of
UrbanDictionary.com.
Look up terrible.
And then the main guy, Sober Boy, he gets thrown off the window, death. That's pretty dope.
Hold up, so he gets killed by the shotgun, but then he comes back for one final scare and kills Blondie, and then he throws him out the window, yeah. And then it's like, alright, so it's just the sober chick left and him, the killer.
You're like, I didn't see that coming, even though we
And this
did.
is all filler leading up to them running in like underneath the tunnels underneath the house. And it's just like 10 minutes of darkness and nothing, them running around. And he's finally dead.
So anyway, the final girl finally goes to drive away, and the car's stalled out. They can't get away.
But she's a mechanic, so she comes out and she hot wires it like she's freaking James Bond or
Even though they
something.
didn't, they just pressed pause, and the grips hot wired it.
And they showed a little spark while they were doing it, like
And then the guy gets stabbed in the fence because he's on top of the car, obviously. And
like
she
Michael
drives,
Myers trying to get in, only he comes through the windshield instead of the window.
and then guess what they do? Freeze frame of her dome.
Hold up. So they drive, she drives backwards and stabbed through the fence.
They should have ended it right there, but they did another minute of her getting out of the car, and then it did
Another
freeze.
2 minutes, and then she gets out and she walks towards the camera while they're showing the whole shot of the crash car and him stabbed. At the morning time, like no, she passed out after the night when she stabbed and killed him. Like
You know what I'm gonna give this
with her
movie?
head on the freaking horn, like.
This movie I was looking forward to, and I've been putting off for
Oh,
a while
well-
now, and I finally watched it. I expected more. I thought I was going to give it a 7 out
Let me
of 10.
set the real precedent.
I expected it
It's a
to be
3
like
out of
that.
10,
I'm going to say it's 5.5 filler scenes out of 10.
which means they're all filler scenes and more out of 10.
Worst performance, the director for showing us a whole bunch of nothing.
Worst performance, all of them.
This is JBM and L-Mid from Mr. Creepshow 09 and Villain News.
Tell
It's
us
free
what you
to subscribe.
thought. Tell us what you think if you're gonna watch
80s
this terrible
slasher
movie.
reviews, summer 2012.